Good morning, good morning. There's still a lot of people in the lobby, so we're just going to wait a minute. So I'll start with, which I try not to do too often, but I'll start with a personal announcement. Okay, I did go out there, but they didn't listen, Lila. Would you want to go get them for me? I try not to, talk too much about personal stuff, but I've got a big personal announcement that I thought was worth sharing, and it's big enough that it's probably the single biggest event in my marriage since the birth of our first child, right? And my in-laws, who happen to be here, don't even know how, but this is big, right? So tomorrow at 3 p.m., I'm getting my hearing aids. Now, for years, I've been able to tell my wife, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, right? Like, that all ends tomorrow. Like, it's over. Tomorrow I have to have accountability going forward for listening to my wife. And so, if I come back in a couple of weeks and say I lost my hearing aids, you'll know why. Unfortunately, the insurance does cover the first replacement for lost hearing aids, so I might have to lose them twice, right? But on a serious note, she yelled at me for years to get hearing aids, and interestingly enough, the reason why I finally made the decision is because when people come forward and we're up here, I couldn't hear anything anybody was saying, when they talked about coming forward. So, my wife yelled for years to get hearing aids, but it actually took someone coming forward and me being up front to actually, justify putting those things in my ears. So I used them for a week for a trial. They're pretty cool, right? You hear things that you never thought you'd hear, right? Like your wife yelling at you. Anyway, all right. So the way the next few months go, as we wind down the year, is we have a number of guest speakers coming in. I'm going to be teaching class the next 2 weeks, and then we'll have Matt Allen here for a week, and then we have a couple more classes, and we're just going to kind of have some guest speakers mixed in for the next 2 months, right? Not a lot of consistency. So what I've tried to do is hopefully put together a lesson that we can look at this week and next. Then we'll have Matt, and then we'll do a lesson that'll be a couple of weeks, and then we'll have an interruption kind of right in through the end of the year. And I think I had mentioned previously, Tad will pick up kind of, at the start of the year, and will, lead this class going forward. So you only have to put up with me for a few more weeks. The topic that was on my mind for the next couple of weeks is living a Christian life with an eternal perspective, right? So thinking about how do we approach, each and every day from looking at things from an eternal perspective, right? And I want to start with kind of the way we did with how to deal with disappointment. And that would be like, how does the world, teach us to live? Like, what are some of the things that, we're inherently taught through societal norms or things that are, kind of reinforced? And then we'll compare that, to what, the Bible teaches about how you live from an eternal perspective. So I'll kind of start off with, I'll just kind of read a brief summary, and then we'll go through some of the things that the world teaches us. So the world, meaning secular culture and societal norms and prevailing ideologies, really teach us about our priorities across cultures, eras, contexts, modern global trends, particularly in Western and consumer-driven societies. They emphasize certain goals and values that do not align with what the Bible teaches. And so I have like 5 or 6 different things that, and I'd be curious to get your input on these. So the first thing that the world values or teaches us through education, through TV, through career, is personal success and achievement should be a top priority in your life. And so, the context here is society often preaches individual success measured by career advancement, wealth, status, and recognition. Media, advertising, social platforms celebrate high achievers. CEOs, celebrities, influencers, and encouraging people to chase promotions, accolades, or fame. Self-improvement industries are at an all-time high, And the goal is really, to achieve your best self, right? And what's really interesting about that is, if you think, it's probably been the last maybe 5 to 7 years, you have all these social influencers, right? Like people who earn a living specifically, right? It used to be just kind of companies marketed, and you would consume that marketing via, an ad in some way. Might be a print, might be a digital, might be radio, might be whatever. But now ads come in the form of individuals who are out doing things that we all, think are cool, like traveling the world in a van, right? There are a lot of different things that are done. But it's really about kind of personal success and achievement. Buy these things to be like me. Do these things to be like me. And while this isn't, a note here, one of the things I was thinking about as I was preparing, I think probably one of the most successful campaigns ever by Satan is the concept of, just like do what makes you happy, right? Like, this world is about you being happy and about you achieving all the things that make you happy, right? And it really, it's the basis for our society now in many ways, right? It's not about help your neighbor. It's not about, do the right thing. It's about doing what's happy, right? What makes you happy. So the first one, personal success and achievement, is kind of one of the top priorities. The second one is material wealth and consumerism. So what the world teaches, acquiring wealth and possessions is a dominating priority. Advertisements promote the latest gadgets, fashion, or luxury good as paths to happiness or status. Financial independence is glorified with movements like FIRE, emphasizing saving for personal freedom. The world often equates wealth with security and fulfillment. Now, once again, it's okay to have money, right? It's about where your priorities are. And I don't know if you've ever kind of read any of this FIRE stuff, but there's several different ways you can read FIRE, and it's really interesting to just see some of the really crazy things that people, say and do and think as it relates to, wealth and comfort and personal security, right? Now, I'm not talking celebrities. I'm talking, people that you might bump into every day and not know it. So the first, personal success and achievement, material wealth and consumerism, two things that we're taught from a societal perspective that should be both priorities and should be important to us. And then the third one here, which I just referenced, self-fulfillment and personal happiness. So what the world teaches, the pursuit of personal happiness and self-expression is central. Movements like self-care and follow your heart encourage prioritizing individual desires, emotional well-being, and authenticity. Popular culture promotes finding your true self through hobbies, travel, or lifestyle choices, often placing personal fulfillment above obligation to others. Now, once again, I want to say, we all have things we enjoy. It might be golf, it might be boating, it might be what. It's the question of where do those things fit in your overall priority, in life. And what's really interesting about this self-fulfillment and personal happiness, Shannon and I often talk about this, as you get older and you kind of get, closer to 50. I know you're only like 29, dear, but as you get closer to 50, you start to have peers that you've interacted with over your life that have been married, for long periods of time. And it always blows us away about people that we knew that were married for 25 or 30 years, and then all of a sudden they just get divorced, right? We were talking about a couple from Blackhawk that we knew that we just found out were divorced, and it just kind of shocked us that, you're on this journey together for 25 or 30 years, and then, you decide at, 45 or 50, you're just not happy and you want to do something different, right? And so I believe, once again, it's much more pervasive now because society teaches, if you're just not happy, you're just not obligated, right? If you're not living your best you just go live your best you, right? So once again, personal success, material wealth, and then self-fulfillment or personal happiness. And then two more here, social status or external validation. And this is one we really have to be aware of. Gaining approval from others through likes, followers, public recognition are a key priority for many in the world, right? Society often values how others perceive you whether through appearance, influence, or social connection. This one we talked about, number 5 here before we wrap it up. We talked about in the last class, independence and self-reliance. So this is kind of consistent with when we talked about, how to deal with disappointment. It was about you dealing with disappointment on your own, through your own capabilities. And then finally, I'll be curious to see this last one here. Immediate gratification and comfort. Seeking instant gratification and avoiding discomfort are common priorities. Technology and consumer culture cater to convenience. Fast food, streaming services, same-day delivery. Society often encourages escaping hardship through distraction or quick fixes rather than enduring for a greater purpose, which is kind of the segue into our lesson, living with an eternal perspective. So any comments or any Dan, before we jump into the lesson?
Say the marriage one that you mentioned, the 25, 30 year get a divorce. I think a lot of times when the kids grow up and leave home, it changes the whole dynamics of the marriage a lot of times. And it's kind of like, gee, the kids are gone, who are you? What do we have in common almost? And so it can put some real stress and strain on marriages. And I think sometimes that's kind of what happens. The marriage has been focused for 18, 20 years on kids. They're gone. And it puts it kind of in a...
It's almost like you're starting over and figuring out the new two of you, right? It's like you're dating again. Absolutely.
On what society says about what we're supposed to do, be your best self, be the best you can possibly be. What I'm finding as I get older and get drawn closer to Jesus is that the more I strive to be like him, the best me comes out. And if we don't keep that as a main focus, it's easy to get distracted by the world, drawn into the world, and live in the world worldly, and not, let Jesus' light shine out through us.
Absolutely, and I think to add to that, I think subtleties are important, right? And a big challenge of ours, right? And we all face the competing priorities of you have to support your family, like you have to save for retirement. You have car insurance. You have potentially car payments. You have things that you have to provide for. It's the question of like, how do you balance that, right? And even when you're in a very big role, right? You're responsible for an organization. You're responsible for a business. You're responsible for it's just understanding like, how do those things that the world values, how do you avoid them creeping into, your mindset versus, keeping them out of your mindset as best you can?
Jason, when you gave that list that just now with us, it's so true. But I think there's a little difference there with the man and the woman. Because I noticed, reading different articles, that a man, when they get together, what is the first thing they talk about? Their career. What do you do for a living, right? I don't know if that's really the same for a woman. It has probably gotten that way because the world, has changed, the culture. But the thing of it is, a woman, really and truly, I think her goals would be a little bit different, I would hope, years ago, that would be, that I would love to have, in my marriage and my family.
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that because, one of the things that I think, please don't kill me for saying this, Shannon, but like, I think one of the things I've observed, right, as you start to age, like a lot of times women are so focused on the kids, right? Like even if you're a woman with a career, like women often worry about the kids so much more than the husbands, right? Like the husband's just like, whatever, they'll figure it out, right? The wives are like, no way, we're not gonna let them figure it out. I'm gonna figure it out for them, right? And so, when the kids leave, right, they get married, they go to college, whatever, the wife really has a hard time kind of figuring out, like, all right, so what's next, right? And for those of you who still have young kids, just know it's coming, right? Like, the freight train is going to hit you at some point where you can't make the decisions for your children anymore. They get to make their own decisions, right? And so it's an adjustment, and it's an adjustment that, can cause strain, right? And you're trying to figure out who you are, and you want to be, which part of the reason why we want to talk about this is, like, you want to have an eternal perspective here and not the world saying, okay, your life has changed, you're getting a little, now go be your best you. Like, that's what you want to do. No, we want to have an eternal perspective, right? So, so once again, the title is Life with an Eternal Perspective, and we'll get a little bit more interactive now. I just wanted to kind of go through this worldly perspective here. So, I thought this verse, I'm going to read this introduction, then I've got 2 verses, and then we'll kind of get into the meat of things, right? So, the Bible teaches that living with an eternal perspective means focusing on God's eternal kingdom, reward, and purposes rather than temporary earthly possessions, right? And I think the part that's really important to remember there is, like, no matter what we do here, it's temporary. Like, it feels like it's forever because we live it every day, right? It feels like it's forever, but, like, it's going to end, right? Like, and so, if you have the choice between something temporary or something permanent, right? Like, you want to focus on the permanent or on the eternal, not on the temporary, but it's hard to do when you're living the temporary every day, right? Like, every day we get up and live the temporary, right? So, for me, that whole clicking of just reminding myself it's the temporary, not the permanent, and potentially, shifting the focus more to the permanent, right? This mindset shapes how Christians prioritize their time, resources, and actions, recognizing that life on earth is brief compared to eternity with God. It involves seeking heavenly treasures, enduring hardship for Christ's sake, and living in the light of Jesus, return and final judgment. Now this is one that really stuck with me. As believers, we are called to view our present lives through the lens of eternity, right? So that jumped out at me. Like, how do we view our present lives through the lens of eternity? Like, what does that look like?
I don't know how to answer that question, but
So you can just answer a different question?
I'll make a different statement. If we prioritize the heavenly things, the rest will take care of itself.
It does, right? The question is, like, how do we get better at that, right? At the end of the day.
Well, I think getting better at it is seeing it is having the faith that He's going to take care of us. And we'll see the examples of Him telling us stories, giving us parallels and things to do. And if we follow those, it'll naturally take care of itself. God will do that. If we put those priorities, look at those priorities from a heavenly or... And you can't answer that question.
Okay, no.
That's tough.
We're going to answer it, or we're not going to go any further. Go ahead.
I would just caution that, if you're trying to live that way, that you're trying to earn your way to heaven, because you can't, right? So you're supposed to be doing what you do because you love Jesus and you love God, and you're doing it because that is what He's telling you to do, and that you're supposed to love your fellow man as you love yourself. So you should have those concerns for them as well. So you're agape loving them, wanting the best for them. And so that's your service, and that's how you're living. You're not living like, oh, I'm doing this because I want to go to heaven.
Right.
That's not, although I see your perspective here, but
no, it's really about, like, that's a really fair point. It's really about, if you think about the daily walk that we have, not necessarily the actions, but how can we change our attitude, outlook, and behavior in a way that cascades all the things that we're supposed to do, right? And that is spend more time in the Word, that is love our neighbor, that is, right? It's not just about are you doing A, B, and C, it's about like how do we really, change the way we approach things, right? So we are looking at things through a little bit more. So the question is, and I'll come to you in just one second, Matthew, the question is like, if you think about your salvation and you think about the things that you deal with every day, like what are the things that you do to kind of keep you centered on, like we all have our thing, right? Like I'm sure, right? Like what are the things that you do that keep you centered on that eternal focus, right? Versus, the things of the world getting in the way. Matthew.
I think the question of how is your perspective on eternity is challenging for us, because your perspective on eternity presumes that God made time and that the border from your identity is a physical construct. So my opinion is that if we're going to have an eternal perspective, then you need to change the way you think about time. Like how time passes, when time was created, when time ends, and that if you want to have an eternal perspective, you need to think about where does the border of my identity begin and end. I don't have property rights. I exist in a community. The community's welfare is more my welfare than what I think it probably is.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty deep, right? I mean, and that kind of goes back to what we read, about in the early church, right? It was more community-based and community-oriented. And they were kind of living day to day, right? Like it was about what was needed that day to, take care of those and to, advance the gospel, right? Fair point. Yeah.
It's kind of a weird thing to say, but I often have to kind of reframe myself when thinking about eternity in knowing that, yes, God's will be done, but that doesn't absolve me from doing good now. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not always, the mindset can't always be God's going to work this thing through, right? And like, I shouldn't be doing things, because I mean, it's like, if I want creamer in my coffee in the morning, I'm not saying, oh, if it's God's will, I have creamer in my coffee. God will put cream in my coffee. I go get the cream and put it in. And that's not to sound flip, that's just a small example. I'm saying that we are here and created, and we have been told to do good. So in the eternal perspective, I often have to make sure I'm checking myself and saying, okay, well, what is your role? What should you be doing now? This isn't just about I'm not doing things, God, it's all you. And most things are God, but He tells me to do things.
Yeah, and it's a difficult balancing act, right? It really is. Go ahead, Frank.
I heard it said just on radio, a guy was saying, like, look at, most of us don't even know who our great-grandfathers were, or parents. And our great-grandkids are not going to know who we were, right? Mostly. So it does put things in perspective that over the next 100 years, nobody's going to remember any of us, unless somehow we make the history books. But, so it does put life in perspective as to where we maybe should focus. We also have to be very practical, because we have to live our life. Work and earn it, and then take care of our families. But I think, when Jesus was in the temple at 12 years old, He says, I want to be about my Father's business.
Yep.
And that's an eternal perspective. Just being about your Father's business, knowing that there's something beyond this life that we need to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to put it. Being about our Father's business, right? That's certainly an eternal perspective. So, good comments. Any others before I move on?
Well, Ecclesiastics, tells you so much, but I want to know something. He had the wisdom, right? And that it talks about life, what it is, and then in the end, what does it say? Vanity, vanity, all is vanity.
Yeah.
So I think it must be just a lifetime that we are focusing on where we are going to end. But it doesn't come overnight. I mean, are you the same that you were 5 years ago?
Absolutely not.
I know. See,
Yeah.
so you've learned and you're working at it and you're changing, your body's changing. We're changing, our body's changing all the time. 7 years, your blood cells are all changed. I mean, so we're just working at this, aren't we, really and truly, what's right? And let God take care of that. I mean, gives us the spirit, what we're doing, wrong and right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I'm kind of I'm coming to grips with in life is, right, at the end of the day, and this is, kind of going back to what Phil says, right? Like, I can fill my life up with, like, a lot of things, right? Like, and I don't mean buying things. I mean, like, I can fill my Saturdays up with watching college football. I can fill my Sundays up if I choose to, out doing things, outdoors or whatever. Like there's a lot of things that we can fill our world with, and we can completely justify doing so, right? The question becomes how does God feel about that, right? How do you balance it? And so what I've tried to do is find a place in my life where I'm more motivated to fill my life up with things that would please Him, not necessarily with things that please me. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to earn something, but what it means is, like, at the end of the day, I want to be able to say that in earnest, like, my efforts were focused on doing more to please you than to please me, right? Like, in earnest, like, that would be the answer, right? Like, now, I don't know if I'll ever have to answer that question, but, in earnest, I want to be able to say, like, listen, like, I put you before me, right? And that's a hard thing to do and the whole point of this is, like, how do we think about our lives in terms of putting Him before us, right? That doesn't mean you're trying to earn it, but it just means that in earnest, if you were asked, like, if you were asked today, like, do you put more time towards the things that satisfy you and make you happy? Not. Earn a living, earn a paycheck, pay your bills, or do you put your time towards more things that make God happy? Like, if you had to answer that question, like, what would the answer be? I know I'm trying to shift to, be able to answer it, that I really do that, but that's part of the reason why we're doing this, right?
I think it's a balance, because I think sometimes we think our careers and jobs don't matter to God.
Yep.
Of course they do. That's where we spend most of our time.
100%.
If we're not a preacher. So, doing that to God's glory, that's what you're made for.
Absolutely.
So that's the work that God put before you. So do it in a way that glorifies God, in a way that's worship towards God.
Yeah, absolutely.
He built the garden before he built an altar. We had to work the garden.
I agree. Keith, you were going to say something?
I think as our life goes through, when we are focused on the eternal, and we know that worshiping Him pleases Him, and the things that are involved in loving God is in loving others. And in that process, like you were saying, you want to do things that please Him, but it becomes more natural without thinking about, look at the things that we're doing to please Him, and we don't even think about it. There's a lot of time. Every one of us in here has done something for somebody at some point in time, just a simple thing that pleases God, and we never thought of it. It never took a second of our life, didn't hurt us, no, and it was a beautiful thing that we've done. And I think every one of us do that, and sometimes we don't even know we do those kinds of little things. And through the eyes of eternity and God, it changes us. He changes us. We don't even know that we're helping others.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. And sometimes,
it becomes a natural flow from us.
And sometimes you have to force yourself to do things that eventually become natural, right?
Sometimes we have to.
That's the unfortunate thing about it, right? Like, I'll be really honest. Like, I did not want to teach this class like 9 months ago or 10 months ago when I started teaching it, right? Like, did not want to spend the time each and every week, preparing. Did not want to stand in front, but like, it became a reward for me to do it, both in my spiritual growth and in, getting to know all of you, because I forced myself to do it, right? To find the time to, go through the embarrassing stories, and so I had to force myself. So sometimes you just have to, right? Like, even though you don't want to, right? And even some days we get up, this morning was hard for me, You know, I mean, like, you know, like, so it's just kind of finding that, like, eventually you benefit from it, but you have to push yourself through it. Okay.
Yeah, I just think it's important to remember that, you know, in Genesis, when they were banished from the Garden of Eden, right, God told them, you're going to work by the 12 of your hands, right? You're going to have to work to get by, and I think in the New Testament also, Paul says, you know, you don't work, you don't eat, or something to that effect. I don't remember where, but, you know, there's an expectation that we are going to do work in this world, that we're going to need to do that. So finding a balance
Absolutely.
there is necessary.
Yeah, 100%.
Just do what you do in a godly manner.
That's very well said,
When you-
right? 100%. The amount of influence you can have by just being a light is significant, right? 100%. So the two verses that kind of served as the premise of this, Colossians 3, 1 and 2. So Colossians 3, 1 and 2. Since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. So once again, it's about where the heart is, not necessarily where the hands are, right? The hands have to do things because the hands have to do things, to your point, Dave. Where's the heart, right? And the heart may be in the way you do it, right? And the heart may be, you know, in the spirit in which you do it, right? And once again, it's important that we talk about these things because the world is such where we can easily, like, I think one of the challenges I have, and I see it here too, like, it's really easy to justify doing or not doing things, right? And so we owe it to each other to kind of, you know, ask ourselves, like, are we legitimately justifying doing or not doing something, right? And I'll give you a really good example. So one of the great things about being an elder is you get lots of input. Like you get lots of wonderful feedback. And everybody has feedback on everything, right? And so the lens with which I, you know, look at things, and I have asked a few people, is like, are you doing that or recommending that because it's best for the church? Or are you doing it because it's something you want and prefer, right? Like, and there's your answer to the question, right? And so we can kind of apply that same lens to ourselves, right? Like when we're making decisions, like are we making a decision because it's really kind of what we want, or are we making it because it's best for us, you know, getting to heaven, you know, one day, or us getting our kids to heaven one day, or us getting our parents or relatives to heaven one day, right? So you can kind of put that same lens on it, right? Because the answer to the question ultimately, like, is it best for the church or is it what you want? Or like, is it because you're taking another step towards being a better Christian, be a better Christian example, you know, being more firm in your faith, you know, et cetera, or hey, you're just going to get some personal satisfaction out of it. It's a big difference, right? Did you have another comment? Someone see a hand here? So that was the first one, and then the next one was,
Jason.
oh, sorry.
In 1 John chapter 5, verse 3, it says, "This is love for God, to obey His commands, and His commands are not burdensome." And secondly, I want to bring this up because it's, you know, it's kind of related to what Frank and Dave were saying. It's not do what God wants on Sunday or Wednesday or just at my job, or if you live in Michigan, or if you move to Florida. It's wherever you go. And one time in life, when I was just thinking, like, what does God want for me for a job? Do I need to work in this field or this field? And I think sometimes God gives us step-by-step advice what to do. And sometimes He says, go that direction, and I'll guide you no matter what. And when I, you know, found this verse as a teenager, I was like, what does God want from me? Just to obey Him. You know, and I think about being a father, you know, with Silas, like, hey, listen to this music. Don't listen to this watch this movie, or go to bed on time. It's not because I'm a jerk and I want someone to listen to me. Because I know what's best for you. And that's what God wants from us. No matter, you know, if it's a hard conversation at work or just something doesn't work right with a friend, God calls us to love. The fruits of the Spirit, if you do that, and everything you do, not some things, that's love for God. That's what He wants.
Absolutely. Yeah, and once again, like, I'm not trying to that's a really good point. I'm not trying to say what's right or wrong. I'm trying to just make you think, right? Like, and if you're thinking about this, then, you know, like the whole point of this class is like, how do we just get incrementally better, right? Like, how do we get incrementally better on all the things that are going to get us, you know, make us be better Christians, make us be a better church, make us be better leaders, etc. Like, the whole point, you know, push some buttons sometimes to make people really think and challenge, right? Like, we all, I think the best sermons are the ones that often make us kind of squirm in our seat, right? Like, and whether we like it or not, like, actively squirming in our seat, you know, and really kind of, all right, is he talking to me? Like, I mean, did he know? You know, I mean, right?
You know, throughout my lifetime, one of the things that's always gone through my mind, even before I became a Christian, at what age I became a Christian, was it was always impressed on me by my parents, by their examples, that no matter in what situation I was in, be it work, be it school, be it whatever, do it the way I believe and I truly trusted that God wanted me to do it or be. Be the best employee I can be. That resulted in me being able to work very, very independently because my bosses knew the job would get done. And that was instilled in me by my parents, by going to church, learning that when you're a Christian, when you're God's child, this is how you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. You know, one of the things I was thinking about as I prepared for this lesson, you don't want to get legalistic, right? But, you know, as we think about your parents, this is what kind of brought this up. Like, you know, do you teach your kids that they have responsibilities, or do you teach your kids that they have obligations? Like which do you teach them? Or do you feel like you have responsibilities or obligations? Like, what's the difference between a responsibility and an obligation? Are you responsible for going to work, or are you obligated to go to work? Anyone? Well, you're responsible if you want to get a paycheck. Like, you're obligated if you want to stay employed, right? Like, so, you know, like, how do we teach? Like, where does the line from, like, the reason why? So, any other, before I give my opinion on what's a responsibility versus an obligation?
Well, for me, that was my love for God.
Okay.
That was it. It was my love for God, my love for Jesus told me that I will be this way all the time.
Okay.
And when I screw it up, well, then I repent and start over. But for me, my responsibility, my obligation to them was because I love them.
Because you love them. Yeah, absolutely. So you felt obligated because of your love, right? Okay. Phil.
I would almost say responsibility is you're giving them an authority, or you're giving them like a condition that, look, you're important, you know, I trust you, this is something that you need to be doing, versus an obligation is, well, don't worry about it, you just do it.
Yeah.
You know,
For someone,
you're obligated because I want you to.
Yeah.
You know, versus I'm entrusting you with this responsibility to get this done. And so it elevates that person in their own, I guess, mind or whatever.
So, okay.
What it take, you know, I mean, you're taking on responsibility. That means you're responsible.
Are you, I got 2 more points over here. I'll come back because I want to ask a follow-up question. Go ahead.
Well, I maybe kind of roughly, an obligation is something you are compelled to do.
Compelled.
Whereas responsibility is something you choose, you know, to maintain.
Okay.
Like a lot of, for example, like a lot of fathers have responsibility to their children, but they don't fulfill them unless they are obligated by the courts, for example.
Okay. Well said, right? The court compels you. That's great. Go ahead, Jeff.
I like what Phil was saying there, is talking about elevating others. You know, there's so much that it changes depending on how you see the world around you, right? I mean, you could be working at the counter at McDonald's and, you know, have that attitude of, oh, I'm slinging this poorly made fast food for, you know, $14 an hour, or you can have that perspective of, oh, I'm serving ice cream to this kid who just had a bad soccer game and is feeling down, you know, and it's like I see value in others. And why do I see value in others? Because they are children of God. They are made in God's image just like me. So that's going to change the perspective of everything I do. It's going to flow from that.
Okay. I'll go ahead, Matthew, and then I'm going to make a comment before we get to the...
I think that, you know, we had a discussion about how we're serving God at our workplaces. But I think in modern society, we've abstracted away most of our responsibilities at work. You know, like what happens at us, we work in the government, we work for big auto, we work for big companies. Our responsibilities to society and to our great-grandchildren are invisible and indecipherable. Our obligations are clear. You know, I have a job, I have a fine, I have a work plan. But am I taking responsibility for my impact on society, my family? And I think that's super duper hard.
Right. Yeah, this is a question I just kind of came up off, no forethought into this. I'll ask this question, right? Like, so I might get myself in trouble. So when you make the choice to become a Christian, right? Like, are you obligated to be like Christ, or are you responsible for being like Christ? Like, when you start your journey, like, is it hey, you're responsible for it, or is it like you made the choice to become a Christian and now you're obligated to be like him? Once again, I didn't put any. I'm just asking, opinion.
I'm looking at it as I want
Okay.
those things.
So it's more responsible than obligated. Okay.
Yeah, with responsibility, I would think that you're getting something good back in return. You know, they say like with great power comes great responsibility. Like because you have that power, like you're also responsible. So you're getting something from it. Whereas like an obligation, is something where you may not get anything good out of it. So I would think of it as more of a responsibility to be like Christ because you are gaining something from it, whether that's something immediate, like someone smiling at you, or, someone asking about your faith, or if it's something further along that, you are being like Christ and you look forward to eternal life.
Okay. Good. Go ahead, Phil.
You're responsible for your own salvation.
Okay. Yeah, once again, I just throw that out there as like, there may be different opinions on it, right? Like, so like once again, when you take a job, like you're obligated to show up to work and you're obligated to do the job if you want to keep the job, right? Now you're responsible for doing all the things you got to do on a daily basis, but there's kind of that minimum of like, if you want to keep the paycheck, you gotta keep showing up, right? And so I just asked, like, what are like the thoughts on that? I was really like, I hadn't even really thought of that until we just started this discussion, right? Interesting discussion. We're clearly responsible for our own salvation, right? Like at the end of the day, we all are big boys and girls, and we all make our own choices, and we all ultimately get to live life the way we want to live it. And at the end, it's going to be between us and God, right? The purpose of this class is really just to kind of get the brain flowing about like, what are the choices we're making? What are the priorities we have? What are we doing? And are they with more an eternal focus, right? So this might actually get us to the end of the year at this rate. We got through the first page. We're gonna be done in 1 second. Bill, did you have a quick comment before the end?
One thing I was just thinking about regarding obligations and responsibilities. A responsibility is something you choose to take on. An obligation is something that other people or the court or societal pressure might oblige you or force you or push you or make you feel as if you need to take that on. So when it comes to Christianity and a new Christian, you want to move from I'm obliged to go to church every week to be a Christian to as part of my responsibility to be in church.
That's so well said, right? Like, it always helps to start with obligations and mature to responsibility, but sometimes you do start with obligations. You think of your kids. Like, with your kids, you're going to do this until you choose to do it on your own. And then when they choose to do it on their own, they do or don't follow us. So with that, appreciate the time. We'll pick it back up next week. Let's just say a really quick prayer. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather together, and we thank you for the discussion, and we thank you for the opportunity to kind of challenge and look at what we say and do each week, knowing that ultimately, God, our goal is to be more like you and to end up in heaven. We pray that you'll be with us as we go throughout the day and throughout the week. We offer this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.